Look at that, beautiful profusion of life. If it weren't for the fact that our planet has a magnetic core, none of that would be here. And why is that? Because of that. Our sun, the star at the centre of our solar system, sustains life on Earth, but it also emits harmful charged particles. This stream of particles is known as the solar wind and is deflected by our magnetic field. Without that deflection, life on Earth would not be possible. The SMILE mission is groundbreaking. For the first time in history, humanity will be able to observe the boundary where the solar wind meets the Earth's life-allowing magnetosphere. The Mullard Space Science Laboratory, nestled in the English countryside, is a world leader in space research. Dr. Forsyth is the current co-principal investigator. We started with a quick background. What is the solar wind?
So the solar wind is a stream of charged particles that are constantly coming off of the sun. The sun is a giant ball of what we call plasma. Plasma is a state of matter that, unlike a gas where the particles are neutral, most of the particles are charged. So we know that things like protons and electrons, these fundamental bits of matter, have a positive charge as a proton or a negative charge as an electron. If they're together in an atom, those charges cancel out. Now, they need to be separate and able to move independently, because then they can interact with things like magnetic fields and electric fields, which are going to change the way that they move in a volume of space.
Right, so that takes me beautifully to the next question. Why does the Earth have a magnetic field?
So the Earth has a magnetic field because of things that are going on in the core of the Earth. So we generate our own magnetic field. Motion way down under our feet is generating this magnetic field that then expands out into space.
So those two things we've talked about, the solar wind, the magnetic field, you're interested in when they meet.
Exactly. As the plasma comes off of the sun, it's going to interact with our magnetic field. It's slightly windy out today. We can feel the wind pushing against it. That is what the Earth's magnetic field is feeling. It is feeling the solar wind pushing against it, and it compresses it into this shape, into this volume around the Earth that we call the magnetosphere. And that's where all of the wonderful dynamics that drive things like the northern and southern lights, the aurora, create things like the radiation belts, all happen. And it is controlled by that interaction between that solar wind coming off of the sun, hitting our magnetic field, and driving the dynamics within that system.
The SMILE mission has launched a satellite to observe this boundary while orbiting the Earth. More than a decade in the making, the mission was first conceived by a scientist at the Mullard Space Science Laboratory. We were there as launch day approached.
So this is the sundial outside of MSSL, and it's where we commemorate some of the people that we've unfortunately lost during our time as a lab. And the most important name on here for SMILE is Graziella Branduardi Raymond. Graziella was the lead of SMILE. This actually goes back many years. She put forward the first involvement for the Mullard Space Science Laboratory in around about 2010, when we proposed a mission called Axiom, which she led.
Oh, Grazia, having fun. Smile.
Look how much I've eaten.
Yay.
Then in 2014, 2015, there was an opportunity to join up with scientists in China. And at that point, the mission became SMILE, and it was selected jointly by the European Space Agency and the Chinese Academy of Sciences to be their next mission.
So Graziella's really the one we thank for this collaboration.
Indeed, she was fundamental to what we were doing, and what SMILE will do and what Graziella envisaged was being able to see all of what that magnetic field is doing by seeing the X-rays coming off from the region just in front of it.
I love this idea of scientists reaching out and saying, let's do this, and not worrying about any of the politics.
I think within science, we've always worked that way. And so without the work that she'd done, we wouldn't have a SMILE mission.
The satellite will carry 4 instruments on board. The most important instrument is the Soft X-ray Imager, or SXI, which was built at Space Park Leicester. Dr. Jenny Carter is the co-principal investigator.
Well, this is the soft X-ray imager. It's a model of the instrument that we have on the SMILE spacecraft.
So this is a model, or could this work if it had to?
This is a model. This
Right.
couldn't work,
Yeah.
but it shows us how the instrument works,
Okay.
how we need to. The top bit is all protecting us from the sun. So
Right.
we have to be really careful about sunlight coming through
Right.
into our instrument. That's
So
bad.
this is just a big screen to keep the sun out of
Yeah.
the optics.
Yeah, this is called a baffle.
Yeah.
All telescopes are made up of an optics part where you focus your light and
Yes.
then a detector part.
Right.
So we have our optics part here, which you
Yes.
can't see, it's hidden.
So you're calling this a telescope, but it's looking
Yeah.
at X-rays.
Yeah.
That's kind of counterintuitive to me.
All right, well, our eyes can't see them,
Yeah.
but they're still there.
Yes.
So we have to make detectors that will see them, and that's what we do with this instrument here. So it's, the whole electromagnetic spectrum is available for astronomers and space scientists to use, and if we can't use our own eyes, then we have to use something else. So we have to design X-ray telescopes to do that for us.
Why are X-rays important for the SMILE mission?
Out in near-Earth space, there is an interaction between the solar wind and hydrogen that's just sitting around the Earth in
Yes.
this big cloud. Those two things can interact, and there's a sharing of an electron. So the hydrogen atom can give up an electron to the, say, oxygen, and that electron goes into a high energy state, and when it relaxes, it has to release some light, some energy to do so. The energy that it gives out happens to be in the X-ray range of light. So that's why we can use those X-rays then to take a picture of how the solar wind is interacting with the hydrogen around our Earth.
You might think of an X-ray as something used to diagnose a broken bone, but X-rays are actually a form of light, specifically high-energy electromagnetic radiation. Although invisible to the human eye, they sit on the same electromagnetic spectrum as visible light and can be detected to create images. The solar wind's hitting that cloud of hydrogen, interacting, the electron comes over, and so that's happening all around the cone of the magnetic field.
Yes.
And because you can look at it in an X-ray, that gives you the shape of the magnetic field.
Yes, so although the hydrogen can go anywhere it likes,
Yeah.
the solar wind, because it's electrically charged, it cannot get into the Earth's magnetic field region,
Right.
which we call the magnetosphere. So that means the X-rays that we'll take a picture of with this instrument will be shaped in this cone shape, and we can then work out the structure and how it changes.
The optics incorporate a key innovation inspired by nature. Now, where's the famous Lobster-eye sit?
So the Lobster-eye optics sit about here underneath this black bit, and they have revolutionized X-ray astronomy. So these type of optics have meant that we've gone from extremely long telescopes like XMM Newton, which is 7 meters long, to something that's only so big.
Okay, and that's really based on how a lobster's eye works.
Yeah, so lobsters live in the bottom of the sea. They have to look all the way around them because they need to protect themselves.
Yes.
And they also live in an area somewhere where there's not much light. So they have to collect as much light as possible.
As Dr. Carter said, lobsters have adapted to their harsh environment at the bottom of the sea where there is little light. Their eyes are on the end of stalks and rely on reflection to get a wider angle view of their surroundings. They have thousands of parallel microscopic square pores arranged in a sphere that reflect light from different angles and direct it to the retina. The soft X-ray imager uses similar optics, square tubes that direct X-rays onto the detector, giving a much wider field of view.
So having this wide field of view, having a wide angle that you're looking at is really beneficial.
So if I pick this up and turn it around, oh, I can really see the little squares.
You can see how the light gets focused
Right.
onto here. Your eyes are the detectors now.
And I can actually see that sort of diffracts the light, is that right?
Yeah, well, it reflects, so you've got different reflections. So you can either reflect off one or two walls. The optic's made up of tiny, tiny little tubes, but they're kind of square in profile, and then how the light reflects down the tube will mean that we can focus that light at the detector where we can measure it and keep the picture.
That's fantastic.
Cool.
It's a whole new technique.
It's a whole new technique and it's being used on various telescopes right now.
Yes.
And so this is making a big change because what we're doing is making a telescope much smaller,
Right.
much lighter.
And small and lighter is all that it's about in space exploration.
Well, if you've got to stick it on a rocket, then it makes it a lot easier, right? The agencies like that kind of thing. So yeah, smaller and lighter is easier.
Even with the reduced size of the SXI, careful planning is still required to accommodate the 3 other instruments on the spacecraft and ensure a successful launch. This is where the Chinese team plays the crucial role. They're responsible for the satellite bus, the platform that supports and carries the scientific instruments.
我们从卫星的，就是说系统的一个设计，这开始的话就是双方在一起联合的这样的一个设计，然后的话就各自负责，比如说，ESA 它负责这个载荷舱这样的一个集成测试，我们负责卫星服务舱和推进舱的一个集成测试，然后最终要到伊斯泰克进行整星的这样的一个集成，然后测试和实验。
这个其实是可以说是我们至少是我个人遇到的挑战最大的一个型号啊。那么这个卫星呢嘛，它的特点就是它的重量非常非常的轻，可以说它的整个卫星的我们是2250公斤。那么它为了我们到达我们12万公里这么很高的轨道上去，我们必须携带将近1600公斤的燃料。这样的话，留给整个卫星的重量只有大概670公斤左右。我们可以看到整个舱体，特别是底下一个推进舱，都是全黑的，它都是全碳的结构，
碳纤维，
碳纤维的结构，它整体结构只有1毫米厚，非常薄。那么1毫米厚要承住我们整个2.2250公斤的这样的一个整个卫星，所以对它的一个承载能力要求挑战非常高。所以我们设计的内部做了很多的优化，做了内外，就是我们看到这是一个倒锥的一个结构，其实内部还有一个正锥，还有一些薄边的立板这些结构，然后每一个尺寸都是基本上就是精简到最合适的尺寸，没有浪费任何一点重量。
So what are we looking at, Jenny?
So the X-rays come through here are optic and they get focused onto a detector.
Right.
So we have some CCDs here.
CCD stands for?
Charge coupled devices here. So they're just a big version of the camera, that you'd have in your phone. And then we take that data down, we send it to ground, and we can then look at the images and build up images.
The electronic systems of the SMILE satellite are radiation hardened to protect them from cosmic rays and are sensitive enough to detect single photons of light or X-rays. These faint analog signals are then converted into a digital format and stored. In addition to the soft X-ray imager, the satellite also carries a light ion analyzer, which measures solar wind particles, an ultraviolet imager that observes the aurora from above, and a magnetometer at the end of a boom that measures the magnetic field around the spacecraft. Its huge orbit allows it to image the whole magnetosphere in a single view.
We've had loads of spacecraft out there, but you get a snapshot that we've passed through the border at a particular point in time and in a particular location, and that's it. Now, with hundreds, thousands of crossings, you can build up an average picture as to what that border might look like. However, it changes all the time. It is an incredibly dynamic border. Normally, the magnetopause, this barrier between the magnetic field and the solar wind, is around about 10 Earth radii away from the Earth at its closest point. When you get a really big CME, like we did around about 3 years ago, then actually that can come into within 5, possibly even 4 Earth radii. So we're halving that distance that the magnetic field actually extends out to. So this can really change how our system looks and what the dynamics are. And our aim with SMILE is to capture those dynamics and see how that all changes by actually being able to see that region, that barrier in 2D, rather than just having a single spacecraft passing through it.
The satellite was deployed from the rocket at an altitude of 700 kilometres. It now has to execute a sequence of manoeuvres to reach its final orbit, which is 121,000 kilometres at its highest point. The spacecraft's navigation and control during this transfer is overseen by the Chinese team.
对于我这一块的话，其实主要是变轨，
哪个是？你可以
就是这整个一套系统，然后包括实际的它从700公里轨道转换到5000乘以12万公里的轨道，这个整个变轨过程。然后它相当于是整个变轨过程中啊，然后推力器的工作呀，一些卫星的安全性考虑啊，包括如果你说像490发动机只有一台，如果出故障了怎么办？一些故障的预案呀，包括
你们有制定相应的预案。
对，现在是有制定相应预案，包括尽快变轨啊，然后包括石牛推力器的一个备份呀，就是后续的慢慢的微调呀，然后还有一些就相当于是挑战，我感觉就是相当于燃料，整星它的那个 Vega-C 的运载是运力有限，我们要提升的轨道又比较高，然后整个的燃料余量就比较少，怎么在这种有限的燃料余量里面，保证它能够顺利的到达预定轨道，其实也是一个很大的挑战。
那怎么解决的呢？
我们后面其实就通过优化我们的变轨策略嘛。从我们最开始设计的时候是18次变轨，然后到后面优化到11次，就是尽量考虑它的安全性，就是燃料的余量，然后来进行一个设计的，然后就是减小它的那个弧段损失吧，相当于是。
Alongside studying the fundamental physics of the magnetosphere, the mission also aims to improve understanding of how the solar wind affects modern technology.
Now, if we've got a coronal mass ejection, the magnetosphere can get pushed in by as much as half. So if that's getting pushed in like that, we need to know when that's going to happen, don't we?
Yeah, so by understanding how these coronal mass ejections and these interactions with the solar wind might bring the magnetopause in, we can start to model that. On top of that though, when we have that interaction, when we have these coronal mass ejections hitting the Earth, we can end up with an event called a geomagnetic storm. Now, magnetic fields are associated with electric currents, so we have loads of electric currents actually flowing in the space around us and defining the shape of our magnetic field out in space. When we have that geomagnetic storm, some of those currents come down and flow through our atmosphere. As they flow through our atmosphere, they can actually interact with stuff on the ground. And those currents are uncontrolled and they can be damaging. They can hit electrical supply systems, they can cause damage to transformers because they are the wrong type of current and they are uncontrolled. And we've seen this before. We have seen damage to transformers, we've seen blackouts caused. We've even seen aircraft being diverted. We've seen impacts on air traffic control where they've had to ground planes and say, we cannot safely fly you. So all these things impact on us in our day-to-day lives in some way, shape or form. We are dependent, so dependent on space. Even driving to get around, we're using GPS. We're using that global positioning system or a global navigation system, where we're using stuff in space to work out where we are, to tell us where we need to go next. But if that system is disrupted, then that's going to have an impact on us.
Eventually, though many years in the future, the data may help improve forecasts of geomagnetic storms.
And that means that people can work and operate to mitigate those impacts. So spacecraft operators can put their spacecraft into safe modes. People on the ground can move people into the right positions, or they can try and turn things off, turn things on, to mean that those currents are not going to cause the damage that they would otherwise cause.
And the more you understand our magnetosphere, the better you'll be able to do that.
Exactly. SMILE, we're doing the fundamental science. We're trying to understand how the system works. And then from that, we're going to work with other people, with other scientists to try and do the prediction to get that forecasting for space weather.
Other missions are already being planned that could eventually enable a 3D reconstruction to be created. Enabling the SMILE mission to get off the ground meant a great deal of testing.
Welcome to the test center. This is the place where we will actually do the environmental test of the spacecraft. Since January, we've been with the spacecraft being prepared, as we have witnessed already the integration of the payload module and the platform. It's in one beautiful piece behind me, and it's almost flight configuration, so to say.
So there were experts and engineers from China coming over to oversee the spacecraft. There were the engineers from Europe actually doing the tests, running the test facility, making sure the spacecraft was doing what it needed to do. And they invited us to come and see one of the tests where they vibrated the spacecraft.
Yeah, I was thinking of that very well.
Which is terrifying when you see it happening. You know, this 2-point-something ton spacecraft on a shaker. All of your bits are on there. All of the bits that are going to go into space are on there, and then they vibrate it, and it's quite a big vibration.
To match launch conditions.
To match the launch conditions and beyond.
So they're trying to shake all your lovely instruments to pieces.
They would prefer that they didn't come to pieces, but they're trying to shake them to the point at which, yeah, they are convinced that everything is going to work okay.
The duration of test is only several minutes. That is a critical environment during launch. But the mechanical engineer, yeah, especially Lola, has done a lot of work to prepare this test.
We both have prepared it.
So, okay, just to survive from the several minutes, launch load, okay? Yeah. But it's very important because I think this first step goes to the space.
Perfect.
The final and most critical test was also the most complex, understanding how the satellite responds once exposed to a space environment.
The pressure in the chamber is going from ambient to the vacuum of space. After this, the panels inside of the chamber will start to be cooling down to simulate the cold of outer space. This thermal chamber has a sun simulation which will be switched on, and this will represent the thermal condition of space. And then we will put the satellite through a series of functional tests to make sure that it functions properly in the representative environment of space.
During the thermal test, we need to monitor the performance of the satellite, especially the temperature and pressure and any other parameters. It's really hard work for us. We need to work it day and night for 24 hours.
All these tests were done in Europe, so we had to have those teams working very closely together. And I think our European Space Agency colleagues and Chinese colleagues have done a fantastic job in making sure that that all works and that SMILE is going to be a success.
How has the collaboration with China been?
The collaboration with China has been excellent.
Because you're 50-50 partners.
It's always been a 50-50 mission. So China is providing what we call the spacecraft bus. So the fuel tanks, the solar panels, the main body of the spacecraft. Europe is providing the payload platform. So we have a module which all of the instruments plug into, and that interfaces with the spacecraft. The instruments have been shared out between Europe and China. We're calling on expertise from both camps to make sure that this mission is really successful.
这个就据我所知，这是第一次我们中国和欧洲进行就是全生命周期，以及是这个深度这个参与的合作。我们这个合作方呢是中国和欧洲的任务方，从任务的策划、实施，我们都是全程就是进行深度探讨，然后任务分配呢也是50%对50%。我们的任务后续的科学研究呢，也是大家就是一起就是深度参与，一起这个研究，数据也是共享。据我所知，这样的这个深度合作，在我们的国际空间那个合作史上，应该是第一次。
我们通过中欧合作，我们就是让我们的队伍和欧方的队伍呢，能够在整个任务中的这个配合和文化建设呢，能够相互的协同起来。其实双方它是有很多理念呐，这个地面研制系统这个还是设计的方式还是有差异的。但是通过任务的这种深度的合作，让我们这种差异更加协调起来，缩小这个 gap， 保证我们那个共同的这个承担任务能够顺利的完成好。
Working with our Chinese colleagues has been brilliant. They are absolutely superb, and so we work with them. They have ideas, we have ideas. It all comes together and it's going to be a fantastic success.
I'm sure there's many lifelong friendships been made.
I would hope so, and the smiles that you see when people, they come together, they haven't seen each other for a while. We know each other, we know the familiar faces. Yeah, people get to know each other, people make those friendships.
It's my very great pleasure, in a sign of friendship and collaboration, to present this to you, and thank you for this wonderful collaboration.
Wow, that's cool.
With testing complete, the satellite was fueled and shipped to Kourou in French Guiana, the designated launch site.
We're about 3 weeks from the launch?
We are.
How do you feel?
Nervous, and I think it would be wrong not to be nervous. The launch is the most dangerous part. When you think about that, you're putting 10 years worth of work and the work of hundreds of other people around the world on the top of a set of fuel that is going to explode and fire it up into the air at tremendous velocity to hopefully get it into space. We can't not be nervous. Obviously, the rocket team will have done all of the due diligence. We hope that it will be a successful, smooth, nice, easy launch. But there's always that little bit that says, it's always a risk.
There'll be a nervous wait of about an hour, and after an hour we'll have a message back from the spacecraft saying, yay, I'm okay. And then little by little the spacecraft will change its orbit, and over the next couple of weeks the orbit will change and get bigger, and about 6 weeks later we will start to turn on the instrument little by little.
2, 1, top, allumage P120 et décollage.
The successful launch marks the end of a long chapter of productive collaboration between the European Space Agency and the Chinese Academy of Sciences, and the beginning of the next phase of the mission. It will be several months before the satellite reaches its working orbit and the first images of Earth's magnetosphere are returned, opening a new window onto the dynamics of the invisible shield that makes life on our beautiful blue planet possible.
I feel excited and nervous and slight sense of disbelief at the moment, truly, because I've been thinking about this for a long time. I think it will take a little bit of calming down and reflection and just enjoying the data. We've been talking about getting the data for so long. I'm very looking forward to actually getting my hands dirty with the real data.